Dov Seidman is the CEO of LRN, and he's the author of Why How We Do Anything Means Everything. The book came out in 2007. It was a big hit then. It's come back out again in 2011 in an expanded edition with a foreword from President Bill Clinton. Dov, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Nice to be with you, Andrew.
So, Dov, why the book then, and why have you expanded it and reintroduced it today in 2011?
I wrote the book in 2007 because I was compelled by the idea that we had just entered the era of behavior, that while behavior always mattered, I began to see that it was mattering in ways it never had before and was more consequential than before. And the last 4 years, and that was before the crisis, it was before it became revealed just how interconnected and interdependent we really are. And in 2007, it became clear to me that we didn't just enter the era of behavior, we plunged way deep into it. And I wanted to underscore and amplify truly the ways in which behavior matters, not just as a way of protecting ourselves from lurching crisis to crisis, side to side, greed to fear, but that behavior is really the new source of competitive advantage.
Well, Dov, I need you to define what this term,
Sure.
era of behavior, means, because are you saying that before 2007, we didn't have such a thing as behavior?
We've been trying to get our behavior right ever since we lived together in villages.
Well, define, first of all, what you mean by this word, the behavior.
Behavior. It's just how we relate to other human beings on the planet, how we lead other people, how we engender trust in our relationships, how we move from commanding and controlling people to connecting and collaborating with them, so we don't just use carrots and sticks to extract performance out of them, but we inspire principled performance in them. But the point is that we have invested in 19th century behaviors. We view man and employees as rational. We treat people as though they still work on assembly lines. We're asking them for repetitive, rational behavior, and we use carrots and sticks. And of all industries, it's the tech industry that's asking for innovation, creativity, new ideas, to collaborate with people real-time, 7/24. These are behaviors that cannot be commanded. They can't even be properly incented. They can only be inspired. Imagine in Silicon Valley telling someone, you must have an idea today, or thou shalt collaborate today. It just doesn't work anymore. I mean, we live in a time where one banker at his computer terminal can lose $2 billion for his bank in London, wipe out bonuses for his entire firm, and introduce additional risk into the stock market. At the same time, one vegetable vendor in Tunisia, armed with a cell phone camera, can spark a revolution towards freedom throughout the Middle East.
Well, you've said that we're living in this age, and I encourage everyone to read the book. It's really a very stimulating and important book. You said we're living in this age of unprecedented transparency.
Right.
But, you know, I'm in Silicon Valley now. Is that because of technology? Is that what technology is leading us to? Or is that a reflection of the technology industry and the new business of Silicon Valley?
Well, transparency is a condition. It's a state of affairs. That's the result of how technology and communications technology have connected us. But in 2007, we were largely connected. We've gone from connected to interconnected. And now we've gone from interconnected to morally and ethically interdependent. We are seeing everyday examples of rising and falling together. Now, transparency is both a condition. We live in a fishbowl. But it's also a behavior to be proactively transparent. When you apologize to someone, that's a transparent behavior. You're rendering yourself vulnerable, you're opening up, you're admitting that you might have harmed someone or done wrong by them. The act, the behavior of apology is a transparent behavior. And in a transparent world, I think, Andrew, we just have two choices. We can hunker down and avoid exposure and lean out of this world. Or we can embrace the idea that we are never going to become any less connected and therefore less exposed. We should think about how this world works, and we should lean into it and figure out how to turn its conditions to our advantage. And that's what How is about.
So maybe I'm oversimplifying, but your use of the word behavior, does it mean morality? So what you seem to be saying is that we're living in an age where our morality is increasingly influential and transparent, and it enables us to either be very good or very bad. Is that fair?
Well, clearly all behavior is rooted in values. And there are two types of values that guide our behavior. There are situational values that guide us to do whatever the situation allows. It tends to inform our thinking, and it makes us think in terms of what we can and can't do, which in turn makes us short-term. I think in the last 20 years, we were pretty much in the grip of situational values and situational thinking. And here we are, I think, paying the price. The other kind of values that inspire behaviors, I think the 21st century behaviors that we really need to be on sustainable paths towards progress, are sustainable values. These values literally sustain human relationships: truth, honesty, integrity, transparency, and hope. These values make us think not in terms of what we can and can't do, but what we should and should not do, which in turn put us in a long-term mindset. I mean, I'll give you, you want an example of what this looks like in action?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's take, I'll start it outside of the tech industry with doctors. In the University of Michigan health systems, doctors were being sued increasingly for medical malpractice. That was their crisis. They got together and they said, what is our sustainable value? We are in the well-being business. When we harm our patients, let's reconnect with them by saying genuinely that we're sorry. Their lawyers said to them, you could be situational. We have more money than them. We can fight them. Let's hunker down and fight this out. They said, no, let's be sustainable and apologize. They started to do that. And their lawsuits went down by 50%, as did their payouts. In addition, it became so comfortable to talk about mistakes and say you're sorry that they infused their culture with transparency and openness, where people talked about other ways in which they can improve medical outcomes, and they so did. And then they made a wave. There are now 37 states that have passed legislation where an apology can't be held against you in a court of law. That's what I mean by connecting with the values that we need. But you know, you can't pay someone for integrity. You can only pay for the behavior that someone with integrity manifests. So I believe that the leaders and companies that are getting it right are the ones that are translating their values into corporate practices and leadership and individual behaviors that make a difference.
Gary Hamel said recently that every CEO needs to understand that they could be the next Mubarak. Is that really your argument as well, that CEOs are more and more exposed now to public opinion, to markets, to making mistakes, that they can't hide, that nobody can hide anymore?
Well, nobody can hide. Think of a college graduate who writes a resume. We used to control a job interview by controlling what we put on our resume. Now your reputation precedes you before you arrive. People don't read resumes anymore, by and large. They Google you and they look at LinkedIn, and what you did in high school and how you're conducting yourself on Facebook really informs what they're going to think of you before you get there. So if you can't control your life story by controlling what you put or don't put on your resume, what's the one thing you can control in a world in which we want to control our destiny? How we live our lives and how we conduct ourselves. Technology has connected us so to the point that I believe that we have democratized, if you will, good making and bad making. More people individually could be a force for good or bad, and anything that can happen will likely happen. All the more reason to root ourselves in those values that inspire us to behave constructively in ways that form relationships. The technology industry needs to get this, and in many cases gets this more than anybody else. Think of all the technology companies that don't even charge people. What people are giving them is their trust, their attention, and a relationship. And the more they get their house right in terms of how they safeguard their confidential information and their privacy, and how they deal with this precious attention and relationship that has been given to them, in getting those housed right, that's what's going to make them grow and be sustainable.
Dov, this is my final question. I need you to be brief here. But what happens to privacy in your era of behavior? Does it die?
It pretty much dies. You know, we used to watch The Godfather and say it's just personal or it's just business, and we would go to funerals and hear that he was a jerk at work but a loving husband at home. This idea that there's two of us and that there's a separate space where we can behave one way in business and another way in our personal lives, I think, has come to an end. Life is continuous, it's integrated, it's fluid. Generation X and Y have one email address and pretty much one Facebook presence. So I think that life is personal. I think Occupy Wall Street is really a denunciation of the idea that it's just politics or just business. Everything is personal, and they're making that known.
On that personal note, Dov Seidman, thank you so much for appearing on TechCrunch TV.
A pleasure.